Greetings and welcome to the Arkansas GIS Users Forum Educational Webinar Series. Today's installment, Arkansas State Parks and GIS, a data-driven response to the COVID-19 emergency in Arkansas. Today's presentation is brought to you by the Arkansas GIS Users Forum. My name is Chad and I'll be your host today. Also joining me is Dino Trawick, the City of Fort Smith Utilities GIS Manager and Chair of the Arkansas GIS Users Forum. Sharon Hawkins, the RDOT GIS and Mapping Administrator and Chair of the Arkansas GIS Board. Brian Culpepper, with the Center for Advanced Spatial Technologies at the University of Arkansas. Daryl Allen, the City of Hope GIS and Technology Coordinator. And Paige Lott with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Should you have any questions today, feel free to use the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. Pose your question at any time during today's presentation, and we will answer those questions at the end of the presentation. Another option is to utilize the chat function to not only chat with the panelists, but other attendees during today's presentation. Stay online and have a chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card that we'll give away at the end of today's presentation. I would now like to introduce Darren Mitchell, the Senior GIS Analyst with the Division of State Parks at the Arkansas Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism.
Hello and welcome to the Arkansas GIS Users Forum. My name is Darren Mitchell. I'm a Senior GIS Analyst for the Division of State Parks at the Arkansas Department of Parks, Heritage, and Tourism. As the Senior GIS Analyst for Arkansas State Parks, I'm responsible for the development and management of State Parks GIS infrastructure, personnel, and related operations. As a former engineer technician, residential designer, and business owner, I have over 20 years of construction, CAD, and GIS experience. In 2008, I was nationally recognized for the design of Little Rock's first USGBC LEED certified high-density residential development. I'm a certified GIS professional and an 11-year veteran of state government. In 2017, I received the Esri Special Achievement in GIS Award for the use of GIS and web technologies in parks and recreation management. In 2019, I was appointed to serve on the Arkansas GIS Board by Governor Asa Hutchinson. I strive to stay active in the GIS community by conducting workshops, presentations, and speaking engagements throughout Arkansas and neighboring states. I often combine my love for outdoors with my knowledge of GIS by serving on multiple committees tasked with advising others on recreational trail development, agency policy, and resource management. I'm an active NASAR certified search and rescue technician too, and I serve on the statewide search and rescue team, as well as our agency SAR training committee. In my free time, I enjoy mountain biking, sailing, hunting, fishing, and spending time camping and traveling with my wife Anna and daughter Tabitha. Today I would like to share with you Arkansas State Parks' response to the global COVID-19 health emergency in Arkansas. On March 23, 2020, Arkansas State Parks initiated one of the largest and most complex data collection, reporting, and analysis programs in its 97-year history. Through the use of GIS technologies, the agency's critical operational information was identified, centralized, and disseminated to the highest levels of state government. GIS maps, dashboards, and analysis have transformed our organization and empowered our leaders to make real-time data-driven decisions in the midst of the global COVID-19 health emergency. This is a high-level overview of how our agency achieved its goals and how GIS was used in our data-driven decision-making process. At the onset of the COVID-19 health emergency, it was unclear as to what the future would hold for our agency and for our state. Our first response and initial actions were based on the National Incident Management System and Arkansas's Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan. On March 10, 2020, the State Parks Division's contingency plan for continued operations were submitted to the Cabinet Secretary for consideration. The following day, on March 11th, Arkansas's first COVID-19 case was confirmed. 2 days later, on March 13th, all park-sponsored programming, workshops, and other in-person events were canceled. By March 20th, many park facilities were closed to the public, limited, or placed under the evolving CDC ADH guidelines and restrictions. On March 24th, 2 weeks after the agency's contingency plan was submitted, spring break in Arkansas began. As surrounding states began to close their state parks, overnight reservations in Arkansas reached record numbers. Day-use visitation across the state began to exceed maximum capacity. The safety of our visitors and staff became our highest priority. All 5 state park lodges were closed, restrooms and bathrooms throughout the state were closed, and all camping was limited to Arkansas residents with RVs only. The agency's ability to manage visitors, staff, and resources quickly became strained. As you can see in the previous slide, Arkansas state parks quickly became overwhelmed with visitors. While we are no stranger to large crowds and large events, we found ourselves in unfamiliar territory, with new terms like flattening the curve, social distancing, and wearing a mask. With the decision to remain open as our agency became an essential service, it was clear that many tough decisions were on the horizon, and in order for our agency to respond responsively and effectively, we would have to have a massive amount of information. The COVID-19 health emergency in Arkansas posed problems that the agency had not seen in its 97-year history. In a way, we were starting at zero, with a growing need to answer the flood of questions pouring in daily. Arkansas has 5 park regions, 53 state parks, and over 1,000 employees. We have hundreds of facilities and over 100 uniformed staff and families living in our parks. Millions of visitors visit our parks from all over the country, and the virus was knocking on our back door. First, we had to ask ourselves, what did we need to know? We needed data for tracking visitation, staffing, and COVID-related supplies across the state. We needed data for facility occupancy, reservations, and operational requirements. We needed to monitor the spread of the virus and its impact on our visitors, staff, and operations. We also needed to know what surrounding states and the federal government were doing in their response. We needed data for our park rangers and law enforcement to enforce the rapidly changing health and safety mandates and regulations. We also needed data for revenue and expense reports to assess the financial impact of COVID-19. We also needed data for addressing human resources issues as they arose. It was determined that this rapidly changing situation required a data-driven response. The challenge to collect, analyze, and report the data required to make reliable, data-driven decisions at the highest level of state government and provide it in an easy-to-understand format became our #1 priority. Faced with the overwhelming challenge to collect, process, and disseminate the vital information needed to make data-driven decisions, we first asked ourselves, what do we already have? We revisited existing reports and data for insight into our operation, and searched for ways to relate our existing data to the current COVID-19 situation. We examined our GIS database, existing staffing reports, asset reports, our park maps, our law enforcement reports, our online reservation system, and even our accounting system and public information repositories for any insight into the gaps or holes that needed to be filled. Besides our internal information, we also looked to outside sources such as the Google COVID-19 Community Mobility Report data for Arkansas, existing ESRI census data to glean population density in areas possibly most affected by COVID-19, as well as our ArcGIS Online usage statistics for our hosted campground maps utilized by our online reservation system. The initial assessment of our internal data revealed that the vast majority of the information required to make our data-driven decisions did in fact exist within our agency. This data, however, was curated by multiple sections and multiple people throughout the state. This data also was retrieved in multiple formats, from PDFs to Excel spreadsheets to handwritten notes to years of paper documents. This led us to initiate a massive system-wide data collection effort in the middle of a global pandemic which posed many challenges and sparked many questions. We had answered the question of what do we already have. Now we need to answer who is responsible for all of this data. What types of data are we dealing with? How reliable is this data? What does reliable mean? And if we can't find it, how do we create it? Also, once we have it, what are we going to do with it? And how do we communicate and collaborate virtually? As the COVID-19 health emergency in Arkansas continued, we were left with more questions than answers. With limited staff, time, and resources, the decision was made to turn to GIS as a possible solution for our data-driven decisions. Using our existing GIS infrastructure and ArcGIS Online, data was collected, processed, and disseminated through reports, visualized in maps, and analyzed through interactive dashboards, all while being managed in a centralized database. In order to provide our leadership with the information needed to make data-driven decisions, first we must process the data and develop a plan using GIS as the platform. We collected, assessed, and sorted the available data. We processed this data into a usable format and identified existing tabular relationships within the existing data. We created relationships where none existed, and then we repeated this process for our spatial relationships. Then we determined what type of data we needed to drive the requested tables, charts, and analysis reports. We then developed an interactive visual system that provides this information clearly and objectively. We created a process for daily collection and quality assurance for an indefinite time period. Once this information was in our GIS geodatabase, we could then provide services, maps, and analysis via the ArcGIS Online application. As this information was collected, disseminated, and managed through the GIS system, a team of over 60 individuals throughout our Arkansas State Park systems provided this information on a daily basis. The GIS office in Little Rock became a mission control of development, collection, processing, analysis, and dissemination for the entire agency. After much deliberation amongst our executive staff and countless hours of research and development from our field staff to the central office, the COVID-19 dashboard was developed and divided into three main categories. The first category of our new dashboard was the Arkansas State Park status. Leveraging our existing GIS technologies and utilizing ArcGIS Online's dashboard building application, the Arkansas State Park Status tab displayed operational information for each state park. This dashboard was an operational awareness tool. It was easily customized to fit our specific needs and enabled service queries and drop-down menus. Data is collected from multiple sources, including the Arkansas State Parks GIS, ACES, our online reservation system, and uniformed staff. As data is provided through this dashboard, it can be sorted and filtered by park by simply clicking on a drop-down menu. These interactive tools empowered our executive management to have access to crucial information needed to make data-driven decisions throughout the pandemic, such as our top 10 most visited parks. Multiple data sets were loaded into the geodatabase daily to provide real-time reporting and analysis, such as the total number of visitors by date, broken down into subcategories such as day-use visitors, campsite visitors, and cabin guests, conveniently displayed in charts and graphs on this operational tab. Simple indicator fields displayed critical data in the form of totals and percentages. A simple gauge field provides an impactful high-level visual aid, while indicators provide the details. Staffing levels based on employee attendance quickly became critical information, accessible through a simple-to-read, simple-to-understand, interactive dashboard. By the time this interactive dashboard went live, the ADH guidelines from the CDC were becoming more clear. This Operations tab displays real-time COVID-19, PPE, and cleaning supply inventory data throughout the entire state park system. COVID-19 supplies were broken down into two categories: cleaning supplies and the personal protection equipment. These two categories were tracked on a daily basis. The information was visualized in a map to help with logistical planning. Colorful chart fields provide quick visuals, while sorted lists reveal the status of individual locations. The Operations Dashboard tab provided an interactive map. This map contained symbolized quantities to aid in the logistical planning for orders, deliveries, and transfers based on time and location. A marketing and revenue tab was developed to display overnight occupancy, reservations, cancellations, and revenue for each park. List fields allow multiple attributes to be displayed within a single list. Total cabin revenue and total campsite revenue system-wide can be broken down by park into individual lists. Clicking on each list will provide more details about the revenue or occupancy at each individual location. Throughout the development process, a visual strategy quickly emerged. The most important data can take center stage by simply enlarging the field widget. On this tab, the total overnight lodging reservation number was the most important piece of information needed. This piece of information represented the total number of people coming in contact with our staff and visitors at this location. Another use of this visual strategy came in the form of grouping data fields, such as indicators and charts, to provide visual connectivity between complex tabular relationships, such as the total cancellations and potential revenue loss indicators below, side by side with a pie chart for reasons for cancellation. Dashboard development tools such as sidebars and headers provide a location to place contextual information. In this case, marketing and revenue data for the reporting period was through April 17th and the current day. This helps provide context to the user. Category 2 of our interactive COVID-19 dashboard displayed the State of Arkansas status. Consuming GIS data from our partner agencies allowed us to display state park locations in relation to the number of active COVID-19 cases by county. By providing access to the Arkansas Department of Health's COVID-19 dashboard, we provided awareness to our executive staff to enable them to make the most data-driven decisions possible by comparing our information with the information of others. It became apparent early on that the actions of Arkansas and the actions of our surrounding neighbors had a major impact on our operations and our future planning for how to handle the crisis. Category 3 was our national and world status tracking. As in most situations, our ability to determine what we needed to do was based on what other people might already be doing. The U.S. COVID-19 Impact tab displays real-time status of each state park systems and our overnight guest state of origin. In this slide, you will see the national map, color-coded and symbolized by the status of their state parks, being closed, open, open with day use only, open with major limitations, open with minor limitations, or other. The bar chart widget dynamically sorts and displays data based on field parameters. For example, our total overnight reservations by state of origin for the reporting period simply displayed the top 5 states contributing to our overnight guests. For a more detailed look at our out-of-state visitors, the bar chart widget can provide access to large data sets by using a slider tool to advance the chart forward and backwards. As our staff diligently recorded the status of all 50 states' state park systems, a combination of lists, interactive maps, legends, and attribute details creates a powerful data-rich communication tool. In this screenshot, you can see the list of each state, the status of their camping, cabins, and lodging. Clicking on each state provides detailed attribute information as to a summary with dates and vital information, their website, and other information needed for us to gauge the status of their individual park systems in comparison to our own. From the beginning of tracking on March 23rd to the peak impact on April 17th, the nationwide COVID-19 impact on state parks became evident. Spring Break 2020 revealed the regional impact of COVID-19 on state parks. Daily tracking of the status of state park systems around the country provided valuable insight into the spread of the virus and documented each state's response. The National Status Report became a crystal ball of information that helped guide our decisions and evaluate our preparedness. Besides the status of our organization, our state, and our country, we also provided links to Johns Hopkins and the World Health Organization's dashboards to provide and relay worldwide status of the global pandemic. The events of 2020 provided an opportunity for us to streamline and refine our data collection, management, and dissemination processes. Throughout the global health emergency, the most basic insight into our operation helped us make our hardest decisions. Here are some examples of some of those decisions and the data that supported them. Being a GIS-based system, of course maps were used in our data-driven decision-making process. Detailed maps of trails, trailheads, and public areas allowed us to effectively manage public access and control the volume of pedestrian traffic. This allowed Arkansas State Parks trails to remain open to the public throughout the pandemic. Current campground reservations and projection data guided the decisions to reopen campgrounds, enabling us to reopen to outside visitors on May 1st of 2020. COVID-19 PPE and staffing reports revealed a lack of adequate housekeeping personnel required to meet the CDC ADH guidelines for full-service overnight lodging. This resulted in the tough decision to close lodges early on during the pandemic. Real-time staffing levels became a critical part of our daily operations, helping us gauge our ability to provide essential services such as cleaning, sanitation, and the enforcement of CDC and ADH guidelines for public health and safety. Collecting, analyzing, and reporting staffing data enabled us to make data-driven health and safety decisions quickly. The graph below illustrates how COVID-19 was impacting our labor force, resulting in a downward trend of total available staff. The insights into our dwindling resources and our abilities to operate our facilities and resources led to tough decisions. Many of our closures, limitations, and restrictions were based on our staffing abilities at each location. Throughout this global health emergency, Arkansas State Parks has remained open as an essential service to the citizens of Arkansas. The importance of outdoor recreation and open space has never been more essential. In 2020, Arkansas State Parks received the highest number of park visitors on record. Our ability to quantify this occurrence was instrumental in our decision-making process. In order to quantify these results and to make our data-driven decisions, we had to think outside of the box to find our information. One location was usage details for a reservation system map, which revealed a substantial increase in views during the onset of COVID-19. The period from spring break to Labor Day marked the highest average views to date. When overnight lodging was reinstated on May 1st, 2020, the map service received its highest single-day usage since its deployment in 2019. This information helped to quantify the public's interest in state park lodging and aided our decisions during the evolving situation. In June of 2020, we were asked by the Arkansas State Parks Recreation and Travels Commission to provide a timeline of our actions throughout the pandemic thus far. Due to the fact that we had created a data-driven response through an interactive GIS dashboard collecting and disseminating information in real time across our entire agency, we were able to justify and quantify the decision-making process. This process did not end after the onset of the COVID-19 health emergency in Arkansas. Our agency continues to produce these reports on a weekly basis, providing all of the same information used to make the tough decisions earlier in 2020. These are two examples of the paper versions of these reports that are provided to our executive leadership weekly. Much of the data remains the same. The format may have changed to be more digestible by our executive staff and shareable amongst our commissioners and other important figures, but the fact that this information drives our decisions to this very day is a testament to the power of GIS and its importance in our decision-making process. From the beginning of the COVID-19 health emergency and through these life-changing experiences of 2020, our fundamental mission and goals remain the same. Our commitment to provide the public with a safe, family-friendly place to enjoy the state's historic, natural, and cultural beauty held strong. Our agency came together in the face of adversity to solve problems, make tough decisions, and continue the legacy of state parks. The trials of 2020 have made us stronger, and our ability to leverage our GIS resources have made us more aware of our operations. In closing, GIS has helped us beat the challenges of the pandemic by enabling us to harness the power of our own information. GIS has allowed us to consolidate, visualize, and interpret our data in ways we've never done before. GIS has earned a new place in the decision-making process at the highest level of our organization. I'd like to thank the Arkansas GIS Users Forum for the opportunity to share a little bit of how Arkansas State Parks responded to this COVID-19 emergency in Arkansas. This has been a tip of the iceberg for an ongoing project to collect and disseminate our vital information to respond to this pandemic. There's much more detailed information that I could provide. If any of you have any questions, my information is at the beginning of this presentation, and I am here and free to take any questions if anybody has any. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you, Darren, for an absolutely outstanding presentation. So now we'd like to turn things over for questions. Looks like there's 2 or 3 ways that you all could pose a question. Of course, the obvious way is in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Click on that and type your question in the box, and Darren, our presenter, and our panelists will read and answer your questions.
Hey Chad, this is Brian Culpepper. I just wanted to mention that Jessica Spain has commented to Darren directly about such a great presentation, and I absolutely agree. That was very informative, Darren. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Darren, we have a question in the chat that asks, what did the input side of the system look like, and how did the staff upload the data?
That's a good question. We actually tried a couple different methods. Early on, we hoped to use ArcGIS Online and the Collector app to collect this data via mobile device. That posed a problem because of our current license agreement and the time it would take to get more users. So we originally had an email system of Excel spreadsheets, and we had about 60 people throughout the state that would collect this information in a spreadsheet, send it to somebody else who would then combine it into another spreadsheet, who would send it to somebody else, and so on until it got to me. Then we abandoned that for a Google Sheets and a Google Docs scenario, which we used up until recently, which allowed more of a relational database type system, where we could have the spreadsheets pre-schema'd, locked down, ready to go, and all of our people could update those spreadsheets individually, and then I would reconcile them, put them into the geodatabase, put them in a SQL server, and then upload them to ArcGIS Online. That actually worked out pretty well. It was very user-friendly for everybody and didn't require us to build any custom front-end interfaces to access our databases or any of our SQL backend.
All right, so looks like we have another question here from Lisa. I think she's asking, would this presentation be available to show her students? She commented, it's a great presentation, Darren. I can answer that. We recorded this presentation, and the plan is to publish and share it via our YouTube channel. So once that's been generated and the recording has been produced, Lisa, that will be distributed and disseminated out across all of our social media and email outlets. I hope that's the answer to your question. If not, feel free. Okay, so it looks like it is. Thank you very much. Okay, so looks like Sam's asking, could we provide a link to the YouTube channel? Yes, absolutely. I can tell you that the link is also, I guess, already on our homepage, argisusers.org. It's at both the top and the bottom of the screen. In fact, let me skip ahead, and I think you can see it. So here at the top right of our screen, you can actually see that link to our YouTube page. Currently, actually, the only content on there is the last GIS Day presentation that we just hosted a couple of months back. So it looks like another question for you, Darren. How did you track the number of visitors entering Arkansas State Parks?
That's another good question. We've had a few different systems in place for years on a park by park basis. Until this pandemic, we never really had to have a justifiable, quantifiable, exact number of how many people were entering our parks, who they were, and what they were doing. So we've got pneumatic traffic counters. I think we've got some infrared traffic counters, but we've also got our overnight reservation and guest counts that come from all of our lodging, cabin, and camping guests. But the vast majority of it, we developed a system for our park superintendents, rangers, and interpreters to visually count visitors on a daily basis starting back in March 23rd. So these were physical observations being sent in by our staff, whether they were posting up at the entrance points and counting cars and using a 2.5 multiplier per visitor, or whether they were literally going around and counting heads all throughout the day. It did pose a lot of challenges, and we did have to figure out a lot of statistical number crunching and whatnot in the beginning to get an accurate representation. But that's pretty much what we've had to do, and we're working on getting more counters, trail counters, and traffic counters put in our locations to get a little bit more refined version of our visitation.
Thank you, Darren. We have another one looking back. This is from Debbie. Is there anything that you would do differently in hindsight? And she says, great work, by the way.
I appreciate that. Yeah, there's probably a lot of stuff I do differently in hindsight. I mean, like anything that I usually get involved in, it's the first time anyone's ever done it, at least in our agency. And so, we're constantly having to reinvent ourselves, look outside the box for new ways to do things. And, often we only can use the tools that are available to us at the time. A good example is the fact that we did not have those user seats in place or a mechanism to get them to be able to use Survey 123 or the Collector app and get that power into our field staff's hands early on, because it really would have been useful from our law enforcement to our visitation tracking and staffing and everything else. In hindsight, I probably, I didn't expect this thing to last till today. I really felt like, me personally, I thought this was going to be gone in like 6 to 8 months, and I was just dumb. And, so I really didn't think that far ahead. But in hindsight, I probably would have taken the time, even if it would have only taken me a couple months to get those seats and to develop those mobile applications, because it would have saved us a ton of time and cut down on labor. I also probably would have spent a little bit more time thinking about the end result. I think when people started asking early on, where are these visitors coming from? I mean, we had states that were blacklisted, that, as you recall, we're not allowed to come here. We didn't want anybody from certain states throughout the pandemic, coming to our parks and camping on our parks because they were on that list. And so, we had staff counting license plates, sending in license plate information. We were putting that in the spreadsheets to try to track where all of our outside visitors were coming from. I mean, things like that. All of our staffing, everybody who was off, why they were off, who was getting COVID, who was off because of COVID reasons. I mean, all these things were just put together in spreadsheets and Word documents and emails. And early on, we just gathered the information. I mean, we really didn't have time to figure out, how we were going to use it and what the schema would be and what kind of system this was going to go into. So I wish I would have had maybe, a week to sit down with some people and say, hey, look, what's this end product going to look like before we start collecting this information? And I mean, in hindsight, yes, I mean, I think I will actually put my foot down in any kind of future scenario and say, look, I don't want to waste time, but we really need to think about this so that we can have a sustainable system, because that's really what we've created, is a organic system that has become a permanent fixture. And it's kind of full of some pretty shaky infrastructure at the moment. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but it's kind of a long-winded version of an answer.
I think that's great. Something going off of what you just said, another question from Kyle. It says, great presentation. How would this use of enhanced GIS be used going forward in a post-COVID?
Oh, we're going to use this information for everything. I mean, once again, this is information that we've always had for individual purposes. So, whether we're making a revenue and expense report or a interpretive workshop or an interpretation program report to kind of gauge, how many visitors are experiencing, Arkansas State Parks in different ways, whether it's lodging or programs or whatever, we had never brought it all together, like we had to do for COVID-19, because it became all about people and people coming in contact with people and what people were doing and how many people were where and what type of environment were these people in, and how can we manage the number of people and the type of people and the volume of people. Now that we have a pretty good baseline for what that is, moving forward, it's going to help us all the way around. It's helping us with our staffing needs. It's helping us determine which projects we're going to approve at different parks, funding sources, you name it. Programs. We've had to, because we had to go virtual in a lot of ways. It's really made us, reevaluate what's important and what, how important is in-person contact, and where do you really need that, and where do you not have to have it. Things like, relating our staffing to our ability to sanitize and clean our facilities and maintain our facilities. These are things that, anecdotally, you have to have maintenance people to do maintenance, but we really never delved deep into, what does that actually look like when you have a running total and a percentage of available working staff day to day, coupled with, hey, here's a park that normally has 10 employees. 5 of them are out because of COVID related reasons. There's only 5 left, and they just experienced their highest visitation on record. How are we supposed to maintain that? What does that look like? How many housekeepers does it take to actually clean a room? How many maintenance staff does it take to actually clean a bathroom? These are all things that we're gleaning from this now that are peripheral side effects of us actually centralizing this data and tracking it daily.
We have another one from Sean. It says, congratulations on the monumentous job. Do you think this will bridge the gap from pretty north-oriented pictures so so many think GIS is all about into actual analysis for many agencies?
Oh, definitely. And this is interesting. And I'm seeing that the maps still have their place. I have to print maps every day for a number of reasons. They're not going anywhere. But the data-driven aspect of GIS, I believe that the majority of non-GIS users hear that. They hear that, hey, these just aren't maps, they're data-driven maps. There's a database behind this, all of this stuff is symbolized based off attributes. And that just kind of goes in one ear and comes out the other for a lot of people. I think the dashboard development, you see it here in Arkansas. That's one of the first things that people keyed in on was the Johns Hopkins and the World Health Organization's dashboard. The second I saw that, I realized, holy cow, this is GIS at its finest. This is the world using GIS to gauge one of the most monumental occurrences and probably in all of our lifetimes. When the health department in its infancy, when it's dashboard first came out and we started consuming those services, I mean, I think a lot of the people above me and around me realized really quickly that, oh, hey, GIS is behind this. And I'd say, yeah. And they're like, okay, well, I thought that was just maps. I thought that, these were just PDFs. And, they quickly realized that, no, this data can be spun up into applications and used for charts and graphs and analysis reports. Just recently I did some geocoding for somebody and blew their mind. They just didn't realize that I could do some geocoding on some address points and put that in a map, even though I do it all the time. They just had never, they came to me with a data issue and not a mapping issue. And I was able to show them that GIS could provide a data solution, for them just as well as it could a paper map. So, I mean, I think the whole world is probably way more aware of GIS as a data and information communication tool more than just maps now. I think I saw an ESRI commercial during the Super Bowl or something. It might not have been Super Bowl, but I saw one on TV for the very first time and thought, well, now, it's gone mainstream. I mean, I believe GIS is going to be a lot more popular these days.
And I see one more here from Sam asking if you used specific dashboard tools or layouts created by your organization, or did you just use the customized ones available through ArcGIS dashboards?
We use the customized version. That this goes back to the fact that I'm still working on our Esri contract to be able to utilize more of their developer type application development. For us, simplicity kind of became the driving factor, and time. I mean, I really had to spin this thing up. I mean, I'm not lying. I was here in the mission control, as I said, for the first probably 3 days, working around the clock nonstop. I mean, it was some pretty hectic stuff. We got to the point where, the questions needed to be answered, and the information was just coming in, and there was so much information you just couldn't comprehend it. There was no way I could hand somebody 15 different spreadsheets and charts and graphs and say, hey, here's everything you need to know to get this answer. So the dashboard really quickly became something that I could just put everything in there. Red means bad, green means good. The bigger piece of the pie is the thing we're supposed to be looking at. I mean, that kind of information and that kind of communication, was, and I said it in the presentation, it was really easy to do, and it made it very simple if I just stayed within the Esri confines of their basic available tools. Could I have used some other tools? Definitely. I would have loved to have been able to branch out and do some other things, but in this situation, I want to say less is more. We had limited staff, limited time, and as you may, we've already lost. We're down to one GIS staff member here in Arkansas State Parks, and with it just being me right now, if I would have built a monster of a system that required 40 hours of upkeep, I'd be in real big trouble. So luckily that thing's out there maintaining itself for the most part, and all I got to do is feed it. So that's a little long-winded question, but it kind of gives you an idea of our thought process and why we did what we did, and not necessarily that we wouldn't have done it a different way, but that's the path we chose.
All right, so it looks like we may have exhausted all of the questions. I'll give it just another second here if anyone else has one and wants to pose it real quick.
Those are very good questions. Those are all the questions I had when I first started this thing. So.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Darren. And to put you on the spot once more, can you come up with a question to ask our attendees? And we'll give this $25 gift card to whoever is the first right answer.
I don't know. This one might be really tough, but does anybody remember the day that we started tracking the COVID-19 national maps. I think I mentioned that a couple times, that actual date back in 2020 where all of this started.
Looks like Debbie was the first to say March 18th.
No, that one is not it. I mean, she's hot.
Hmm.
Okay, well, I mean, you know, we can play this game. Think will start going up, but no, Connie did not get it either. Neither did Linda. Everybody's in the right ballpark here. Tanner, you're almost there. I think you just need to, or I can come up with another question. How about there you go. Sam got it.
All right.
March 23rd.
Well, congratulations, Sam. You have won a $25 Amazon gift card. I have your information from the regulations, so we will use that to get emailed to you. All right. So in closing out today, I would like to offer everyone the opportunity, if you haven't seen already, on our website. This is where you can go and submit your idea for a presentation. Our current plan as we continue forward is to host at least one educational webinar series installation once a month. We plan for the third Wednesday of every month, #Webinar Wednesday. So if anyone has an idea or wants to go online and submit their presentation, this is where you would do it. The shortcut is simply argisusers.org/webinar. And finally, to close out today, again, this installation of the Arkansas GIS User Forum Educational Webinar Series was brought to you by Arkansas State Parks and Darren Mitchell. Our next installation will be on February 17th, coming up next month. We hope you all can tune in, and I would like to once again thank Darren for his presentation today and all of our panelists, and as well as all of you attendees and your questions. Thank you so much and have a great day.